The Pinewood Motor Court wasn't on any map I could find. I only spotted it because my headlights caught the edge of the sign when I missed my turn off Route 9 in northern Vermont. By then, it was past midnight, and I'd been driving for 16 hours straight. The sign was hand-painted wood, faded but readable. Pinewood Motor Court, vacancy. No neon, no lights, just reflective paint catching my high beams. I almost kept driving. But my gas light had been on for 20 miles, and the next town wasn't for another 40. My phone had lost signal an hour back. The smart choice was to stop, ask for directions, maybe fill up if they had a pump. The driveway curved through a stand of pine trees, branches scraping the roof of my car. When I came out the other side, I found 6 small cabins arranged in a half circle around a gravel lot. Each one had a porch light, dim and yellow. 3 of the cabins had cars parked outside. The office was the smallest building, tucked off to the side. Through the window, I could see a lamp on a desk and an older man reading a newspaper. I parked and went inside. The man looked up slowly. He had to be 70, maybe older, wearing a flannel shirt and wire-rimmed glasses. "Help you?" he asked. "I need a room for the night," I said, "and if you know where I can get gas, that would be great." "Gas station's 43 miles north," he said, "but I got a can out back if you need it. 5 gallons. Cost you 20. "That'd be perfect." He reached under the desk and pulled out a metal key on a wooden tag. Number 4 was burned into the wood. "70 for the night," he said. "Checkout's at 10. I paid cash. He didn't ask for my name or ID, just pocketed the bills and pointed toward the door. "Cabin 4, last one on the left. Bathroom works. Heat's a little finicky, but it'll get warm if you give it time." "Thanks." I grabbed my duffel from the car and walked across the gravel. The air smelled like pine sap and cold earth. It was early October, and the temperature had dropped fast once the sun went down. Cabin 4 was small. 1 room with a double bed, a wooden chair, a dresser, and a tiny bathroom with a rust-stained sink. The walls were knotty pine, the floor uneven planks. A radiator sat under the window, ticking softly. It reminded me of the cabin my grandfather used to rent when I was a kid. Same smell. Same feeling of being tucked away from the world. I kicked off my boots and lay down on the bed without undressing. Just for a minute, I told myself. Just to rest my eyes. When I opened them again, it was 3:18 a.m. The room was freezing. I sat up, disoriented. The radiator had stopped ticking. I reached over and touched it. Stone cold. I got up and tried the knob. It turned, but nothing happened. No heat, no sound. That's when I noticed the voices. They were coming from outside, low and steady. I walked to the window and pulled back the thin curtain. 2 people were standing in the gravel lot between the cabins. A man and a woman, both dressed in old-fashioned clothes. The man wore a long coat and a hat. The woman had on a dress that came down to her ankles. They were just standing there, facing each other, not moving. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but their mouths were moving. Slow, deliberate, like they were having a conversation in a language I couldn't place. Then the woman turned and looked directly at my window. I stepped back, heart pounding. When I looked again, they were gone. I stood there for a full minute staring at the empty lot. No footprints in the gravel. No sound of doors closing. Just gone. I told myself I'd been dreaming. That I'd woken up confused and seen shadows or branches moving in the wind. But the window was still cold under my hand. I climbed back into bed and pulled the blanket up to my chin. The room stayed cold, but I was too tired to care. When I woke up again, it was light outside. My phone said 8:47 a.m. The radiator was warm. The room was warm. Everything felt normal. I packed my duffel, used the bathroom, and stepped outside. The morning air was crisp, the sky pale blue. The other cars were still parked where they'd been the night before. I walked to the office. The old man was sitting in the same chair, reading a different newspaper. "Morning," he said without looking up. "Morning. Hey, I wanted to ask, who were the people outside last night? Around 3? He set the paper down slowly. Nobody was outside last night. I saw 2 people, a man and a woman standing in the lot. They were dressed kind of old-fashioned. He studied me for a long moment. You see them clear? Clear enough. He nodded almost to himself. Then he stood up and walked to a shelf behind the desk. He pulled down a small wooden box and opened it. Inside were old photographs, black and white, edges curled with age. He picked one out and handed it to me. The photo showed a man and a woman standing in front of one of the cabins. The man wore a long coat and a hat. The woman wore a dress down to her ankles. "That's my grandparents," he said quietly. "Built this place in 1947. Ran it together for 32 years. I stared at the photo. It was them. I was sure of it. "They both passed in the winter of '79, he continued. "Same night. Carbon monoxide leak in cabin 4. Radiator malfunctioned. I felt the air leave my lungs. Cabin 4. Yep. But I stayed in cabin 4. I know. And you didn't think to mention that before you gave me the key?" He took the photo back and placed it carefully in the box. "They don't hurt anyone," he said. "They just check in on folks sometimes. Make sure the place is still standing." I didn't know what to say. He walked to the door and opened it, letting in the morning light. "Gas cans by the shed. Help yourself." I filled my tank, left the can by the shed, and got in my car. Before I pulled out, I looked back at cabin 4. The curtain in the window moved just slightly. I drove 43 miles north without stopping. The hotel sat at the edge of the Mojave Desert, the kind of place where truckers stopped for 4 hours of sleep before pushing on to Los Angeles. I wasn't a trucker, but I needed those 4 hours just the same. What I got instead was a phone call that wouldn't stop ringing in a room that had no phone. If you've ever stayed somewhere and felt like you weren't alone, even with the door locked, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your story. I pulled into the Bluebird just after 2 a.m. The building was long and low, painted turquoise blue that had faded to gray in most places. The neon sign out front showed a bird with one wing burnt out. 17 truck cabs filled the parking lot, engines ticking as they cooled. The lobby smelled like burnt coffee and pine sol. A woman in her 50s stood behind the counter, filing her nails. She barely looked up when I walked in. "Need a room," I said. 85. King or 2 doubles? King's fine. She slid a registration card across the counter. I filled it out while she ran my credit card through an old machine that made a grinding sound. "Room 109, she said, handing me a plastic key card. "Ground floor, far end. Checkout's at 11. "Thanks." The room was what I expected. Thin carpet, heavy curtains, a bed with a comforter that had seen 1,000 travelers. But it was clean enough, and the air conditioner worked. I dropped my bag on the chair, kicked off my shoes, and collapsed onto the bed. That's when the phone rang. I opened my eyes and stared at the nightstand. There was a phone there, the old kind with a coiled cord and actual buttons. It was ringing, a shrill mechanical trill that cut through the quiet. I picked it up. Hello? Silence. Not dead air, but silence with weight, like someone was on the other end, listening. Hello? I said again. Click. The line went dead. I hung up and lay back down. Wrong room, probably. Or the front desk testing the line. 2 minutes later, it rang again. I sat up, irritated now, and grabbed the receiver. Yeah? Silence again. But this time I could hear something underneath it. A faint sound, rhythmic and distant. Breathing, maybe. Or static. Who is this? Click. I slammed the phone down harder than I meant to. Then I unplugged it from the wall. Problem solved. I turned off the light and closed my eyes. The phone rang again. I sat bolt upright, heart pounding. The phone was unplugged. The cord was lying on the nightstand, disconnected from the wall jack. But it was ringing. I stared at it in the dark, the sound impossibly loud in the small room. I reached over and picked it up, hands shaking. What do you want? This time I heard a voice. Faint, crackling like it was coming from very far away. Room 109. A woman's voice, thin and strained. What about it? I said. Help. Then the line went dead. I sat there holding the phone, my hand slick with sweat. Then I dropped it back onto the cradle and turned on every light in the room. The phone sat there, unplugged, silent. I grabbed my jacket and walked out into the parking lot. The night air was cool, dry, carrying the smell of diesel and sage. A few trucks had their running lights on, but most were dark. I walked to the lobby. The woman at the desk looked up from her phone. Something wrong? She asked. The phone in my room keeps ringing, I said. Okay. You want me to call down there and tell them to stop? No, I mean it's ringing, but nobody's on the line, and I unplugged it and it still rang. She set her phone down. You unplugged it? Yes. And it rang anyway? Yes. She stared at me for a long moment. Then she sighed and stood up. Let me see the room number again. 109. Her expression changed. Just slightly, but I caught it. What? I said. Nothing. Let me make a call. She picked up the desk phone and dialed. Waited. Hung up. Line's dead, she said. What do you mean, dead? I mean the phone in 109 isn't connected. Hasn't been for 2 months. We had it disconnected after... She trailed off. After what? She looked at me, then at the computer screen, then back at me. There was an incident, she said quietly. A guest in that room. She called the front desk late at night, said someone was trying to get into her room. We called the police, but by the time they got here, what happened? She'd had a heart attack. They think it was the stress, the fear. She was on the phone with 911 when it happened. Dispatcher heard her collapse. The air in the lobby suddenly felt too warm. When was this? I asked. 2 months ago, July 14th. And you're still renting that room? The room is fine, she said, a little defensive now. Nothing happened to the room. It was a medical emergency. Could have happened anywhere. But the phone doesn't work. I'm telling you, it's disconnected. Whatever you heard, it wasn't coming from the phone line. I stood there, trying to process that. Can I switch rooms? I asked. We're full. Convention in Barstow, every room is booked. Of course you are. She reached under the counter and pulled out a key card. "Look, I can give you room 112. Same floor, 3 doors down. Guest just canceled 10 minutes ago. I haven't updated the system yet." "Thank you." She made the switch and I went back to 109 to grab my bag. The room was exactly as I'd left it. Lights on, phone unplugged, sitting silent on the nightstand. I picked up my duffel and turned to leave. The phone rang. I didn't answer it. I walked out, pulled the door shut, and went to room 112. The new room was a mirror image of the first. Same layout, same furniture, same heavy curtains. But it felt different. Lighter somehow. I locked the door, put the chain on, and got into bed. I didn't sleep well. Every small sound made me tense. The air conditioner cycling on, the ice machine down the hall, footsteps in the corridor. But the phone stayed silent. At 6:30 a.m., I gave up trying to sleep and checked out early. The woman from the night before was gone, replaced by a younger guy who smiled and asked if I'd had a pleasant stay. "Sure," I said. I was halfway to my car when I stopped and looked back at the building. Room 109 was dark, curtains drawn. But as I stood there, I saw the curtain move. Just a twitch, like someone had pulled it aside to look out. Then it fell still. I got in my car and drove west, watching the bluebird shrink in my rearview mirror until it disappeared into the desert haze. 3 days later, I was scrolling through my phone and saw a notification I'd missed. A voicemail from an unknown number, time-stamped at 3:47 a.m. the night I'd stayed at the Bluebird. I almost deleted it. But curiosity got the better of me. I played the message, static, crackling, then a woman's voice, faint and distant. "Room 109. Help." I deleted it immediately and blocked the number. But sometimes, late at night when my phone is charging on the nightstand, I think I hear it ring, even when the screen stays dark. Rest stop wasn't actually by any river I could see. Just a 2-story brick building off Highway 22 in southern Illinois, surrounded by flat farmland and a gravel parking lot. I checked in because of the rain. I stayed awake because of the mirror. Before we go further, I'm curious. Do you sleep with a mirror in your bedroom, or do you keep them covered? Let me know in the comments. The storm hit around 7 p.m. I'd been making good time from St. Louis to Indianapolis, planning to push through in one go. But the rain came down so hard my wipers couldn't keep up. The highway disappeared under sheets of water, and I could barely see the taillights of the car ahead of me. The exit sign for the Riverside rest stop appeared out of the gray, and I took it without thinking twice. The parking lot was half full. I counted 8 cars and 2 motorcycles under the overhang by the office. The building looked old but maintained, the kind of place that had probably been there since the 50s. Inside, a man in his 30s sat behind the counter watching a small television. He glanced up when I walked in, dripping water onto the mat. "Need a room?" he asked. "Yeah, just for the night." 65. Second floor's quieter if you don't want to hear the highway. "That works." He handed me a key, an actual metal key on a plastic tag. Room 203. "Vending machines are by the stairwell. Checkout's at 10. "Thanks." Room 203 was at the end of the second-floor hallway. The carpet was worn but clean, and the walls were painted a pale yellow that looked dingy under the fluorescent lights. I unlocked the door and flipped on the light. The room was small. A double bed with a floral bedspread, a wooden dresser, a chair by the window, and a closet with no door. The bathroom was tiny, just a toilet, sink, and a shower with a plastic curtain. And mounted on the wall directly across from the bed was a mirror. Not a small one. It stretched nearly 4 feet across, framed in dark wood, old and heavy-looking. The glass had a faint patina, the kind that comes with age. I dropped my bag on the chair and went to the window. The rain was still coming down, drumming against the glass. I could see the highway in the distance, headlights crawling through the storm. I ordered a pizza from a place that delivered to the motel, ate half while watching the news, then took a shower. The water was hot, and by the time I got out, I was ready to sleep. I climbed into bed and turned off the lamp. That's when I noticed the mirror. Even in the dark, I could see my reflection. The faint glow from the parking lot lights outside came through the curtains, just enough to illuminate the glass. I lay there looking at myself. My outline in the bed, the shape of my head on the pillow, the curve of my shoulder under the blanket. Then my reflection moved. Not much. Just a shift like I'd turned my head. But I hadn't moved. I sat up, heart suddenly pounding. My reflection sat up too, matching me exactly. I stared at it. It stared back. I told myself I'd imagined it, that I'd been half asleep and my eyes were playing tricks. I lay back down, keeping my eyes on the mirror. My reflection lay down too. I watched it for a long time, waiting for it to do something wrong. But it didn't. It just mirrored me perfectly, the way reflections are supposed to. Eventually, I closed my eyes. I don't know how long I slept. When I woke up, the room was darker. The parking lot lights must have gone off, or maybe the storm had knocked out some of the power. I could still see the mirror, just barely a darker rectangle against the wall. And I could see my reflection. Except I was sitting up in the mirror. I was lying down in the bed, but in the mirror, I was sitting upright, facing forward. I froze, not daring to move. My reflection's head tilted slightly like it was listening to something. Then it stood up. I was still lying in bed, paralyzed, watching my reflection climb out of the bed in the mirror. It stood there for a moment, facing the glass, facing me. Then it walked toward the mirror, toward me. I shot up in bed, gasping, and fumbled for the lamp. My hands were shaking so badly it took 3 tries to find the switch. The light flooded the room. I looked at the mirror. My reflection was sitting up in bed, just like me. Exactly like me. Hand still reaching for the lamp. Normal. I got out of bed and walked to the mirror. My reflection walked toward me. I lifted my hand. It lifted its hand. I touched the glass. Cold, smooth, solid. Just a mirror. I backed away and sat on the edge of the bed, breathing hard. I looked around the room, trying to find something rational to hold on to. That's when I noticed the closet with no door. From where I sat, I could see inside it, empty except for a few wire hangers. But in the mirror, the closet wasn't empty. Someone was standing in it. I turned my head slowly to look at the actual closet. Empty. I looked back at the mirror. In the reflection, a figure stood in the closet. Dark clothes, face hidden in shadow. Just standing there, perfectly still, facing the bed. I stood up, keeping my eyes on the mirror. The figure didn't move. I took a step toward the closet. My reflection took a step toward the closet. The figure in the mirror's closet stayed where it was. I reached the closet and looked inside. Nothing. Just hangers and the back wall. In the mirror, the figure took a step forward out of the closet. I spun around. The room was empty. Just me, the bed, the furniture. No one else. But in the mirror, the figure was walking across the room. Slowly, deliberately, heading toward the bed. I grabbed my bag, shoved my feet into my shoes, and ran for the door. I didn't look at the mirror as I passed it. I ran down the hallway, down the stairs, and into the office. The man at the desk looked up, startled. "There's something in my room," I said, out of breath. "In the mirror." "What?" "The mirror in room 203. There's someone in it. In the reflection, but not in the room." He set down his phone. "You mean you saw someone in the mirror?" "Yes. Standing in the closet in the reflection, but when I looked at the actual closet, no one was there." He rubbed his face, suddenly looking tired. "Damn it. I told them to take that mirror down." "What?" "That mirror. It's been in that room since the place was built. 60, 70 years maybe. People have been complaining about it for as long as I've worked here." "Complaining how?" "Same as you. They see things in it that aren't in the room. Figures, faces, things moving when they're not moving." "And you just leave it up there?" "The owner won't get rid of it. Says it's original to the building, part of the history. I've asked him to move it to storage a dozen times." "So what am I supposed to do?" He pulled out another key. "Room 108, ground floor. No mirrors except the one in the bathroom, and you can cover that with a towel if you want." I took the key. "What about my stuff?" "I'll get it in the morning. You don't need to go back in there tonight." I went to room 108, locked the door, and pushed the dresser in front of it. I didn't sleep. In the morning, I checked out as fast as I could. The man from the night before brought my bag down and handed it to me without a word. As I walked to my car, I looked up at the second floor. The curtain in room 203 was open. I could see the mirror on the wall, reflecting the empty bed. And standing in front of the mirror, looking out the window, was a figure. Dark clothes, face hidden in shadow. I got in my car and drove until I couldn't see the Riverside rest stop anymore. Motor Inn had a smell I couldn't place. Not bad, exactly. More like old paper and copper pennies and something floral that had died a long time ago. I noticed it the moment I walked into the lobby, and it followed me all the way to room 9. If you've ever walked into a place and just knew something was off, I want to hear about it. Drop a comment below. I wasn't planning to stop in Rutherford, Nebraska. The town wasn't on my route, and I'd never heard of it before my GPS rerouted me because of construction on Highway 80. But by the time I realized where I was going, I'd already committed to the detour. Rutherford had one main street, a gas station, a diner, and the Wagon Wheel Motor Inn. It was just past 9 p.m. when I pulled into the lot. The motel was small, maybe 10 rooms total, arranged in an L shape around a patch of gravel. A wooden wagon wheel leaned against the office wall, painted red and white. The woman at the front desk looked about 70. She wore a cardigan despite the summer heat and smiled when I walked in. "Evening," she said. "Passing through?" "Yes, ma'am, just need a room for the night." "We've got plenty available, $55. That includes coffee in the morning." I handed her my card and she wrote my information in a ledger by hand. No computer, no card reader. She ran my card through one of those old manual imprint machines. "Room 9, she said, handing me a key. "Third door from the end. If you need anything, just pick up the phone and dial 0. "Thank you." That's when I noticed the smell. Faint but distinct. Old paper, copper, and something sweet that had turned. I almost asked about it but decided against it. Sometimes it's better not to know. Room 9 was small and dated. The walls were wood paneling, The bedspread was brown and orange, and the carpet was a pattern designed to hide decades of stains. But it looked clean enough. The smell was stronger in here. I set my bag on the chair and opened the window. The night air was warm and still, carrying the smell of cut grass and distant farms. It helped a little. I sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out my phone. No signal. Not even one bar. Of course. I tried the TV. It worked, but only 3 channels came through clearly. I settled on the weather and went to take a shower. The bathroom was tiny. The sink was stained with rust, and the shower curtain was clear plastic, yellowed with age. But the water was hot and the pressure was decent. When I came out, the smell had gotten worse. It filled the room now, thick and cloying. The sweet rot scent was stronger, almost overwhelming. I checked the trash can, the closet, under the bed. Nothing. I went to the window and opened it wider, but the smell didn't dissipate. If anything, it seemed to concentrate near the bed. I stood there, towel around my shoulders, trying to decide what to do. Then I noticed the stain on the carpet. It was near the foot of the bed, mostly hidden by the bed frame. Dark, irregular, about the size of a dinner plate. I crouched down to look closer. It was old, whatever it was. Faded and set deep into the fibers. I touched it with my finger, then immediately wished I hadn't. The smell intensified. I stood up quickly and wiped my hand on the towel. My stomach turned, and I had to take a few deep breaths to keep from gagging. I grabbed my phone and the room key and went back to the office. The woman looked up from her book when I walked in. "Everything all right?" she asked. "There's a smell in the room," I said. "Room 9. It's really strong and I can't figure out where it's coming from." Her expression didn't change. "What kind of smell?" "I don't know. Sweet but rotten, and something metallic. It's making me feel sick." She set her book down slowly. "Is it near the bed?" "Yes." She nodded, more to herself than to me. "I'll give you a different room." "What's causing it?" "Old building," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Sometimes smells get trapped in the floors, the walls. Happens in places this age." "That's not what I asked." She looked at me for a long moment. Then she sighed. "Room 9 had an incident about 6 years ago. A guest passed away in there. Natural causes, they said. Heart attack. But he wasn't found for a few days." The floor seemed to tilt slightly under my feet. "A few days?" 3, to be exact. It was summer. Hot. The air conditioning in that room wasn't working right. I felt my stomach turn again. "And you're still renting it?" "We cleaned it. Professional service, twice. Replaced the carpet, repainted, replaced the mattress. The health inspector cleared it." "But the smell is still there." "Some people notice it. Most don't." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because most people don't notice," she repeated. "And the ones who do, we move them, like I'm going to do for you right now." She pulled another key from the board behind her. "Room 4, other side of the building. You won't have any problems there." I took the key, but I didn't move. "What was his name?" "The man who died." "I don't remember." "You don't remember. It was 6 years ago." She was lying. I could tell by the way she looked away, by the way her hands fidgeted with the edge of her book. "Did you know him?" I asked. Her jaw tightened. "Go get your things from room 9. I'll credit you $10 for the inconvenience." I went back to room 9. The smell hit me the moment I opened the door, stronger than before. I held my breath, grabbed my bag, and walked out. I didn't go to room 4. I got in my car and drove until I found another town, another motel, one that didn't smell like death. But the thing is, I can still smell it sometimes. Late at night, when I'm lying in bed in my own apartment, I'll catch a whiff of it. Old paper, copper pennies, and that sweet rot smell. It's faint, barely there, but it's enough to make me wonder if the smell didn't come from the room at all. If maybe it came from something else, something that followed me out. A few weeks later, I did some research, found an obituary from 6 years ago in the Rutherford newspaper. A man named Gerald Pritchard, 63, found deceased at the Wagon Wheel Motor Inn, survived by his sister, Dorothy Pritchard. The woman at the front desk had been wearing a name tag. Dorothy. I never called to ask her about it. I didn't want to know. But sometimes I think about Gerald Pritchard, alone in room 9, waiting 3 days in the summer heat for someone to find him. And I think about Dorothy, his sister, still running the motel, still renting out that room, still lying about remembering his name, which didn't have a view of any mountains, just fog so thick I could barely see my car from the office door. I checked in because I had no choice. The road ahead was closed, and the only other option was sleeping in my car on the side of Highway 101. Before we finish, I'd love to know, have you ever been stranded somewhere and had to stay in a place you wouldn't normally choose? Tell me about it in the comments. The fog rolled in off the Oregon coast just after sunset. One moment I could see the road ahead. The next I was driving through soup. My headlights barely penetrated 3 feet in front of me, and the white line on the road kept disappearing. I slowed to a crawl, gripping the wheel, searching for a safe place to pull over. That's when I saw the sign, Mountain View Lodge, vacancy. The driveway appeared out of nowhere, and I took it. The lodge was small, maybe 8 rooms, single story. It sat in a clearing surrounded by towering pines. The fog swirled around it, making the building look like it was floating. I parked near the office and went inside. The man behind the counter was young, maybe mid-20s, with tired eyes and a flannel shirt. He looked up from his laptop when I walked in. "Room?" he asked. "Yeah, just for the night. Is the highway going to clear up?" "Not until morning. This fog settles in most nights this time of year. You picked a bad time to drive the coast." "Apparently." He took my information and ran my card. "Room 7, last one on the right. Breakfast is from 7 to 9 in the main building." "Thanks." He handed me a key card, then hesitated. "Hey, if you hear anything from the room next door, room 6, just ignore it." I paused. "What kind of anything?" "Sometimes people hear knocking, or voices. It's an old building. Sounds carry weird." "Is someone staying in room 6? "No, that room's not available." "Why not?" He looked uncomfortable. "Owner's orders, just don't worry about it. You'll be fine in room 7. I wanted to ask more, but the look on his face told me he wouldn't elaborate. Room 7 was at the far end of the building, exactly as he'd said. Room 6 was directly to my left, its door identical to mine except for the number. I unlocked room 7 and went inside. The room was simple. Clean. A queen bed, a small table with 2 chairs, a TV on the dresser. The bathroom was small but functional. Everything smelled faintly of pine cleaner. I dropped my bag, ordered takeout from a place that delivered, and settled in to wait out the fog. The food arrived about 40 minutes later. I ate while watching a nature documentary, then brushed my teeth and got ready for bed. That's when I heard the knocking. 3 sharp raps. Deliberate, coming from the wall between my room and room 6. I froze, toothbrush in hand, listening. Silence. Then 3 more knocks, same rhythm, same spot on the wall. I walked over and pressed my ear against it. I could hear something on the other side. Movement, maybe. Or breathing. "Hello?" I called out. The knocking stopped. I waited, but nothing else came. After a few minutes, I convinced myself it was exactly what the clerk had said. Old building, weird acoustics. Maybe pipes expanding or something settling. I finished brushing my teeth and climbed into bed. The knocking started again. 3 raps. Pause. 3 raps. Pause. Over and over, steady as a heartbeat. I sat up and stared at the wall. Is someone there? The knocking continued, unchanging. I grabbed my phone and called the front desk. It rang 6 times before the clerk picked up. "Yeah." "This is room 7. The knocking you mentioned? It's happening right now." He sighed. "I told you to ignore it." "How am I supposed to ignore it? It's constant. It'll stop eventually. It always does." "What is it?" Silence on the other end. "Hello?" I said. "Look, man, I don't know what it is. I just work here. But room 6 has been locked for 3 years. Nobody goes in, nobody comes out. Whatever you're hearing, it's not a person." "Then what is it?" "I don't know, and honestly, I don't want to know. Just turn on the TV, put in some earbuds, whatever. It'll stop in an hour or so." He hung up. I sat there holding the phone, the knocking continuing behind me. 3 raps. Pause. 3 raps. Pause. I turned on the TV, raised the volume. It helped a little, but I could still hear the knocking underneath. Then it changed. Instead of 3 raps, I heard scratching, like fingernails on wood, moving slowly down the wall. I turned down the TV and listened. The scratching moved lower, then stopped near the floor. Then I heard something else. A voice. Quiet, muffled, but definitely a voice. "Help!" My blood went cold. "Help me." I stood up and backed away from the wall. The voice was coming from room 6, but the clerk had said it was empty, locked for 3 years. "Please." I grabbed my room key and went outside. The fog was even thicker now, pressing against the building like a living thing. I could barely see the parking lot. I walked to room 6 and tried the door. Locked. I knocked. "Hello? Is someone in there?" No answer. I pressed my ear to the door. Silence. No scratching, no voice, nothing. I went back to my room and called the front desk again. "I heard a voice," I said as soon as he picked up. "Someone in room 6 asking for help." "There's nobody in that room." "Then open it, check." "I can't." "What do you mean you can't?" "I don't have the key. The owner does, and he's not here." "So call him." "It's midnight." "Someone is asking for help." He was quiet for a moment. Then, quieter, he said, "Nobody's been in that room for 3 years. Not since the guest." "What guest?" "A woman checked in alone. Told us she didn't want to be disturbed. She stayed for 2 days. Didn't leave the room. On the 3rd day, housekeeping found the door open and the room empty. Her stuff was still there, but she was gone. We never found her." I felt my throat tighten. "What do you mean you never found her?" "I mean she disappeared. Police searched the woods, checked hospitals, put out a missing person report. Nothing. It's like she just vanished. And you kept the room locked since then? Owner thinks she might come back. Or maybe he's just superstitious. I don't know. But that room stays locked. I heard the scratching again, louder now. I'm hearing it right now, I said. The scratching and the voice. I'm sorry, man. I really am. But there's nothing I can do tonight. If you want to switch rooms, I can... You said you're full. We are. Then what am I supposed to do? Wait it out. I promise it stops. He hung up again. I stood in the middle of the room, phone in hand, listening to the scratching. It moved up the wall, then across, then down again. Searching. Then the voice came again, clearer this time. Let me out. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the chair by the window, lights on, TV on, waiting for dawn. The scratching continued until about 4 a.m. Then it stopped, just like the clerk said it would. But the silence that followed was almost worse. At 6:30, as soon as the sky started to lighten, I packed my bag and left. I didn't check out, didn't stop at the office. I just got in my car and drove. The fog had lifted. The road was clear. I made it to Portland by noon. 3 weeks later, I saw a news article. Remains found near Oregon Coastal Lodge. Construction workers renovating the Mountain View Lodge had discovered human remains buried in the woods behind the property. The remains were female, estimated to have been there for several years. Police were investigating. The article didn't name the victim, but I knew. And I think about her sometimes, late at night, locked in room 6, scratching at the walls, calling for help that never came, wondering if anyone could hear her.